He lives a life of luxury, but he's missing the one thing money can't buy, affection. After pretending to be passed out, he's taken by surprise by the genuine kindness of a young girl. That night, he discovers that love can come from where you least expect it and change everything. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments what city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to it. Robert Miller pressed the phone against his ear. Patricia's voice cut through the line like a sharp blade. She was demanding more money. Always more. You don't know the first thing about raising kids. All you know how to do is sign checks. Robert took a deep breath. At 42, he had built an empire from scratch, but with Patricia, all his strategies failed. Michael and Thomas are your sons too, or did you forget? He hung up without answering. His hands were trembling with pent-up tension. He walked down the stairs with quick steps, the conversation replaying in his head like a scratched record. He didn't notice when he lost his balance on the second-to-last step. His right foot slipped, his body tumbled forward out of control. The impact against the cold marble echoed through the silent house. Pain exploded in his right shoulder, shot through his ribs and spread across his back. For a moment, everything went white. When his vision returned, he was lying on his side on the cold floor. His breath came in short, painful gasps. He wiggled his fingers, then his toes. Everything worked. Nothing seemed broken, just bruised. Badly bruised. That's when the idea struck him. No one had come down to see if he was okay. The house remained silent as always. The nannies were asleep in their rooms upstairs. The housekeeper, Clara, had been on medical leave for 3 weeks. Only the twins were in the house. No one knew he had fallen. Robert closed his eyes and remained motionless. A strange curiosity took hold of him. He wanted to see what would happen, who would come to help him, who actually cared about his life beyond the salary he paid. It was a cruel experiment, he knew, but he needed to know the truth. The minutes passed slowly. The cold marble sucked the warmth from his body. The pain in his shoulder throbbed in regular waves. He expected to hear hurried footsteps, worried voices, someone shouting his name. But nothing happened, until a different sound cut through the silence. Light, almost childlike footsteps were coming down the stairs, an uneven rhythm of small feet trying to be quiet. "Mr. Miller." It was a child's voice, a girl. Robert racked his brain. Then he realized Beatrice, the daughter of Clara, the housekeeper. The girl was temporarily living in the mansion because her mother had to be hospitalized for treatment. Robert had reluctantly agreed, setting strict rules. No noise, no mess. He had barely spoken to the child. He didn't even know how old she was. 7, maybe 8. Small, bare feet approached. A faint scent of baby soap reached him. Beatrice knelt on the floor, so close he could feel the warmth of her small body. "Are you hurt?" Robert kept his eyes closed, his body still. He wanted to see what she would do. Beatrice touched his arm with delicate fingers. The touch was gentle, careful, so different from any contact he ever received. People always touched him with a purpose. Firm handshakes in meetings, self-serving pats on the back, but this touch was pure. "I'll go get help." The footsteps ran off. Robert heard doors opening, her voice calling for the nannies, but no one answered. Beatrice returned, her breathing rapid. Nobody's waking up and the babies are crying upstairs. Indeed, a sharp cry began to echo from the second floor. Michael and Thomas were awake. The sound quickly grew louder. Robert felt the girl move away again, hurrying up the stairs. He remained alone on the floor. The experiment was turning out differently than he'd expected. There were no responsible adults running to save him, just a 7-year-old girl trying to manage a situation far bigger than she was. Footsteps descended again, slower this time. Robert opened his eyes into tiny slits and saw Beatrice carrying both twins, one in each arm. The effort was visible. She took each step with extreme care, her knees trembling under the weight. "It's okay. It's okay. We're going to take care of your daddy. He's going to be fine." Beatrice placed the twins on the floor next to Robert. Michael stopped, crying for a second, looking curiously at his sprawled-out father. Thomas stuck his thumb in his mouth, his eyes red and swollen. The girl ran to the sofa and returned with a fuzzy blanket. She spread the blanket over Robert carefully, covering him from his shoulders to his feet. The soft fabric brought an unexpected comfort. Beatrice then took his hand and wrapped it between her two small ones. "It's okay. I learned this from my mum. When someone's not doing well, we stay close. We hold their hand, we don't leave them alone." Robert felt something strange happen inside him. A pressure in his chest that wasn't physical pain, something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Michael started crying again. Beatrice let go of Robert's hand and picked up the baby, rocking him gently. She sang a quiet song, off-key but full of tenderness. Robert recognized the melody. It was an old song his own mother used to sing when he was little. "You're hungry, aren't you? Just wait a little bit." The girl stood up, still holding Michael. Thomas started to whimper too, reaching out his little arms. She picked him up with her other arm, staggering under the double weight. Robert wanted to open his eyes, to get up, to yell that she was too small. But he did nothing. Beatrice went into the kitchen with the twins. Robert heard cabinet doors opening, jars clinking, water running. "Look, the bottle's right here. Let me warm it up. You have to test it on your wrist, just like Grandma taught me." The minutes dragged on. Robert continued to lie on the cold marble, covered by the blanket. The pain in his shoulder had become a constant pulsing sensation, but he didn't move. He had to see how far this would go. Beatrice returned with the two babies, each holding a bottle. She sat on the floor next to Robert and settled the twins against her small body. Michael and Thomas drank the milk greedily. The girl stroked each of their heads, her fingers running through their fine hair. "Your daddy's tired. He works a lot. Every day I see him leave early and come back late. My mom says that men who work too much forget how to live. They forget how to play. They forget how to smile." Robert felt the words like little stabs. Each sentence revealed a truth he had spent years avoiding. Beatrice was right. He had forgotten how to live. His own sons were strangers to him. He paid for everything they needed, but he was never present. "You're lucky to have a dad. My mum says my dad left when I was born, that he didn't want to stay, but your dad stays. He just doesn't know how to show that he loves you. Yet." The twins finished their bottles. Beatrice took the nipples from their mouths and stood them up on the floor. Michael took a few wobbly steps and leaned against Robert's leg. Thomas mimicked his brother. The girl stood up and grabbed a worn-out stuffed bunny from the table. It was clearly hers, faded by time and love. She placed it next to Robert's head. "This helps me when I'm scared. When I'm thinking about my mom being sick in the hospital. When I feel alone. You can have him until you feel better." Robert wanted to open his eyes right then. He wanted to hug that little girl and apologize for everything, for being so cold, for not seeing that she was also scared, alone, and in need of care. But it wasn't time yet. Beatrice lay down on the floor beside him. Michael and Thomas sat down too, leaning against their father's body. The girl began to sing again, softly. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star. The world is big, but you're not far. Someone's here right by your side to guard you and to be your guide." The words flowed naturally, sincerely. Robert felt his eyes burn behind his closed eyelids. Something was breaking inside him, something hard and old and painful. The twins calmed down. Their breathing became slow and deep. Beatrice stopped singing and just lay there, her small hand resting on Robert's arm. "You can't leave. The babies need you, even if you don't know it yet. Even if you think money is enough. It's not. I know because my mom works a lot, but she always finds time for me. She always hugs me before I go to sleep. She always asks how my day was. You need to do that with them too." Silence once again filled the house. Robert could only hear the breathing around him, Beatrice's, calm and steady, Michael's and Thomas's, rhythmic with childish sleep, and his own, growing more and more uneven. He didn't know how much time had passed when he heard the front door open. Hurried footsteps entered the house. A female voice shouted his name. It was Megan, the older nanny. "Oh my God, what happened here? Beatrice, what did you do?" He fell. I tried to help. I took care of the babies. I gave them their bottles. Robert felt adult hands on his neck, checking his pulse. I'm calling an ambulance. No. He's going to be okay. I know he will. He's just tired, really tired. Kid, get out of the way. Let me handle this. But I promised I'd take care of him. I promised no one would be alone. Robert couldn't take it anymore. He slowly opened his eyes and saw Beatrice's face above him, her big eyes wide with shock and hope. Tears streamed down the little girl's face, silent and sincere. You were awake the whole time? And Robert, for the first time in 20 years, didn't know what to say. The silence that followed was thick. Megan, the nanny, took a few steps back, seeming to realize that this moment didn't belong to her. Robert remained. On the floor, his eyes fixed on Beatrice's face. The girl still clutched the stuffed bunny to her chest, tears streaming down her cheeks. I heard everything, Robert repeated, his voice weak. Every word you said, every song you sang. Beatrice looked down. Were you testing us? The question hit Robert like a punch. That was exactly it. Testing, measuring, calculating people's worth as if they were stocks on the market. The girl had seen it with a clarity no adult had shown. I wanted to know if anyone cared, he answered. And now you know? Robert tried to get up. The pain in his shoulder protested, but he managed to sit. Michael and Thomas, who had fallen asleep on the floor, were still breathing peacefully. He looked at his sons as if seeing them for the first time. Now I know that a 7-year-old girl has more courage and compassion than I've had in my entire life. Beatrice wiped her tears. 8. I'm 8 years old. That simple correction made Robert realize how little he knew about the life around him. He didn't even know the age of the daughter of the woman who cleaned his house. Beatrice, Megan, intervened. Go to bed, sweetie. I'll take care of Mr. Miller now. No, Robert said. Let her stay, if she wants to. Beatrice looked from Robert to Megan, then back to Robert. She nodded slowly and sat on the floor beside him, keeping a respectful distance. Megan sighed, clearly uncomfortable, but nodded. I'll take the boys to their cribs. You need some ice for that shoulder. She carefully picked up Michael and Thomas and went upstairs. The silence returned, but it was different now, less suffocating. Why did you do all that? Robert asked. You could have just left things as they were, Beatrice shrugged. My mom always says we take care of the people near us. It doesn't matter if they're rich or poor. If someone needs help, we help. Your mother taught you well. She's the best person in the world, Beatrice said, and her voice trembled. That's why I'm so scared. Robert frowned. Scared of what? Of losing her. Like I lost my dad. He left when I was a baby and never came back. Now my mum is sick and I don't want to be alone. The words came out in a rush, as if Beatrice had been holding that fear in for too long. Robert felt something tighten in his chest. He knew the fear of losing people too. He had lost his mother early. He had isolated himself from everyone after that. What's wrong with your mother? The doctors use big words. Something with her heart. She needs surgery, but it's expensive. Really expensive. That's why she works so much, to save money. But then she got sicker and had to stop. Robert closed his eyes. Clara had worked for him for 4 years. A discreet, competent woman who had never asked for favors. And he had never asked about her life. He had never taken an interest. He paid her a fair wage, he thought, and that was enough. But now he realized it had never been enough. Do you have other relatives? Beatrice shook her head. Just me and my mum. That's why when she had to go to the hospital, Megan talked to you. You let me stay here. That was very kind. Kind. The word sounded strange. Robert couldn't remember the last time someone had called him kind. Beatrice, thank you for taking care of me, of my sons, for showing me there's still goodness in the world. The girl smiled. You can be good too, you just have to try. Megan returned with an ice pack and some pills. Robert accepted both. The nanny helped him up and guided him to the sofa. Beatrice followed them. You should go to the hospital, Megan insisted. Tomorrow, right now I just need to rest. Megan didn't look convinced, but she didn't push it. When she walked away, Beatrice remained standing there. You can sleep in the guest room, Robert said. Or you can stay here a little longer if you want." Beatrice sat on the other end of the sofa. "You're not going to pretend again, are you?" "No, never again." "Promise?" "I promise." They sat in silence for long minutes. Robert felt the pain in his shoulder, but he also felt something more. A change, small but real, like a crack in a very high wall. "Beatrice, tomorrow I'm going to the hospital, and I want you to come with me. We're going to visit your mom." The girl's eyes widened. "Really? Really? And we're going to talk to the doctors, see what can be done." Beatrice said nothing. She just jumped off the sofa and hugged Robert, a tight, desperate hug. He tensed for a second, unaccustomed to this kind of contact, but then he raised his good arm and returned the hug. It was awkward, strange, but it was real. When Beatrice let go, she was crying again, but these were different tears, tears of hope. "Thank you, Mr. Miller." "Just Robert. You don't have to call me Mr." Beatrice smiled and nodded. She picked up the stuffed bunny and offered it again. "Want to keep him tonight, for good dreams?" Robert accepted the worn-out toy. It was light, soft, and smelled of baby soap. "Thank you." Beatrice said goodbye with a wave and went upstairs. Robert was left alone in the living room, holding the bunny as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Sleep didn't come easily. The pain in his shoulder was constant, but it wasn't just that. Robert's mind spun in circles, replaying every moment of the night. Beatrice's words, the twins' cries, the lie he himself had been living. When he finally fell asleep, it was already dawn. He woke to the sound of voices, loud voices, angry. Robert opened his eyes and saw Patricia in the entryway, arguing with Megan. His ex-partner was wearing designer clothes and sunglasses. Her face was red with anger. "I have a right to see my children. I don't care if he's sleeping or hurt." Robert got up from the sofa, ignoring the pain. "Patricia, what are you doing here?" She turned to him, taking off her glasses. "What am I doing? You hung up on me yesterday. Then you didn't answer any of my calls. I thought something had happened." "Something did. I fell down the stairs." Patricia blinked. "You fell?" "Yes. I hurt my shoulder, but I'm fine. And nobody told me. I'm the mother of your children, Robert. I had a right to know." "You're right. I'm sorry. It was a rough night." Patricia fell silent, clearly disarmed. He never admitted she was right. Then she took a deep breath. "I came to get the boys. I'm spending the weekend with them." "Okay, but first I need to tell you something." And it was at that moment that Beatrice came down the stairs, already dressed, her hair combed. She stopped when she saw Patricia. Patricia looked at the girl, then at Robert, suspicion returning. "Who is this child?" "She's the housekeeper's daughter. She's staying here temporarily." "Staying here," Patricia repeated. "You let a strange child live in the same house as my sons?" "She's not a stranger, and she took much better care of Michael and Thomas than either of us ever has." The words came out harsher than he intended. Patricia turned pale. "How dare you?" "I dare because it's the truth. When I fell yesterday, you know who showed up? Her. An 8-year-old girl. She got the twins, gave them bottles, sang them to sleep. She did everything we should have been doing." Patricia looked at Beatrice with an expression Robert couldn't decipher. Anger, shame. "I want my sons. Now." Robert nodded to Megan, who went upstairs to get the twins. The silence that followed was heavy. Beatrice remained frozen on the stairs. When Megan brought Michael and Thomas down, already dressed, Patricia took them without looking at Robert. But before she left, she turned. "This isn't over. We're going to have a serious talk about this situation." And she left, slamming the door. Robert stood there, feeling the weight of her words. He looked at Beatrice, who had come down the rest of the stairs. "She didn't like me," the girl said. "She doesn't like a lot of things, but that doesn't matter. You're here because you need to be, and because I want you to be." Beatrice smiled. "Are we still going to visit my mom today?" "Yes, we are." But as he got ready to leave, Robert couldn't get Patricia's expression out of his head. There was something beyond anger in that look. There was determination. And he knew that determination well enough to know that trouble was coming. Trouble he wasn't sure he was ready to face. The question that tormented him was simple and terrifying. How far would Patricia go to prove he was an unfit father? The county hospital was a different world from the one Robert knew. Crowded hallways, the smell of disinfectant, cracked plastic chairs in the waiting room. People with tired faces had been waiting for hours. Robert felt his discomfort grow, but Beatrice held his hand tightly. "It's here," she said, stopping in front of a door on the 4th floor. "My mom shares a room with 3 other women." Robert pushed the door open slowly. The room was small, stuffy, with 4 beds separated by thin curtains. Clara was in the 3rd bed near the window. When she saw her daughter, her face lit up, but her expression changed when she saw Robert behind her. "Mr. Miller." She tried to sit up, but the effort was too much. She turned pale. "Easy, Clara. You don't need to get up." Robert pulled up a chair while Beatrice ran to hug her mother. "Mommy, are you feeling better?" Clara hugged her daughter tightly, but Robert noticed how her arms trembled. She was thinner. Her face had a sickly pallor. "I am, sweetie. A little better every day." The lie was obvious, but told with so much love it sounded like the truth. Beatrice settled on the edge of the bed, holding her mother's hand. Robert remained standing. "Mr. Miller, I wasn't expecting—" "Is Beatrice giving you any trouble?" "She's no trouble at all. In fact, I came here because I need to talk to you, and to your doctors." Clara frowned, confused. "My doctors? Did something happen?" Robert pulled the chair closer. "Beatrice told me about your condition, about the surgery you need." Clara's face turned red. She looked at her daughter with a mix of embarrassment and something that might have been anger. "Beatrice, you shouldn't have—" "She was worried," Robert interrupted. "And for good reason. Clara, you've worked for me for 4 years. You've never asked for anything, never complained, and I never asked if you were okay. That was wrong of me. You pay me a fair wage, sir. You don't need to worry about anything else." "But I want to worry." The words came out firmer than Robert expected. "I want to help, with the costs of the surgery, with whatever is necessary." Clara was silent for a long moment. Then she shook her head. "I can't accept that, Mr. Miller. It would be charity, and I have my pride." "It's not charity," Robert said. It's what should have been done from the start. You deserve access to decent treatment. Beatrice deserves to have a healthy mother." Tears began to stream down Clara's face. She tried to hide them, but Beatrice was already crying too, hugging her mother tightly. "I'm so scared," Clara whispered. "So scared of leaving her alone, of not getting to see her grow up." Robert felt a lump in his throat. "You're not going to leave her. We're going to fix this." He spent the entire morning talking to doctors, reviewing charts, making calls. Clara's situation was serious, but treatable. She needed heart surgery that would cost more than she would earn in 5 years. But for Robert, it was less than he spent on a single business dinner. When he returned to the room, Clara was sleeping. Beatrice was still beside her, holding her hand. "Is she going to get better now?" the girl asked, her eyes red from crying. "She is. The surgery is scheduled for next week. The best doctors will take care of her." Beatrice stood up and hugged Robert. He returned the hug, feeling less awkward than the first time. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving my mom." It was late afternoon when they left the hospital. Robert took Beatrice to get something to eat before heading home. He chose a simple diner, not the expensive places he usually frequented. The girl ate with a healthy appetite, telling stories about her mom, about school, about her dreams. "I want to be a doctor when I grow up," she said, "to help people like the doctors taking care of my mom. You'll be an amazing doctor." It was getting dark when they arrived home. Megan was waiting for them at the door, her face tense. "Mr. Miller, Patricia called 5 times. She said she needs to speak with you urgently." Robert sighed. "Thanks, Megan, I'll call her later." But he didn't have to. Patricia arrived half an hour later, unannounced, storming into the house like a hurricane. This time she wasn't alone. A man in a suit accompanied her, carrying a briefcase. "Robert, we need to talk now." She didn't even wait for a response, walking straight into the living room. This is Frank Andrews, my attorney. Robert felt his stomach clench. Attorney? What's going on, Patricia? What's going on is that you're putting my children at risk. She pointed to Beatrice, who had stopped halfway down the stairs. You let a strange child live in the same house with them. You fell down the stairs and no one helped you properly. You're clearly losing control of your life. This is ridiculous. Ridiculous? Patricia opened her purse and took out an envelope. I have witnesses. Megan told me everything. How you lay on the floor pretending to be unconscious while an 8-year-old girl took care of the babies. How you didn't go to the hospital even though you were hurt. How you're now getting inappropriately involved with your employee. I'm not getting involved with anyone, I'm just helping. Helping? Patricia laughed, a bitter sound. You barely look at your own sons, but now you're playing the hero for an employee and her daughter. It doesn't make sense, Robert, unless there's something else going on. What exactly are you implying? The attorney stepped forward. Mr. Miller, my client is concerned. For the safety and well-being of her children, she is considering filing for full custody. The words landed like a bomb. Robert turned pale. You can't do that. Oh, I can, Patricia said, her voice icy. And I will, unless you stop this phase you're going through. Send this girl away, go back to being the person you were. The person I was? Robert felt his anger rise. The person I was didn't pay attention to his own children, who lived only to work, who didn't care about anyone but himself. Is that the person you want back? I want someone stable, predictable, not someone who's having a nervous breakdown and compensating with random acts of kindness. Get out, Patricia. With pleasure, but you'll be hearing from my attorney very soon. She turned to leave, but stopped at the door. Oh, and one last thing. I've already spoken with the family court judge who handles our custody case. He's a very good friend of my father's, and he's very interested to hear about your recent changes in behavior. The door slammed shut. The silence that followed was deafening. Robert stood in the middle of the living room trying to process what had just happened. He looked up and saw Beatrice sitting in the middle of the stairs, hugging her stuffed bunny, silent tears streaming down her face. I'll leave, she said, her voice small. I don't want to cause trouble. I can go back to the hospital, stay with my mum. No. Robert walked up the stairs and sat beside her. You're not going anywhere. This isn't your fault. But she said a bunch of lies because she's scared that I'm changing, scared of losing control. But I'm not going to let her use you as an excuse. What if you lose your sons because of me? The question was honest, direct, and it cut Robert deeply. He looked at this 8-year-old girl who had already been through so much and saw not just her, but everyone he had ignored throughout his life. All the people who suffered while he accumulated money and power. If I lose my sons, he said slowly, it will be because I was a terrible father, not because of you. Never because of you. And if Patricia thinks she can threaten me into going back to who I was, she's mistaken. Because for the first time in my life, I'm trying to be someone better. Beatrice moved closer and rested her head on his shoulder. Robert put his arm around her, and they sat there on the stairs, while outside, the storm Patricia had created began to take shape. Robert's phone buzzed. It was a message from Patricia's attorney. The hearing was set for 2 weeks from now, and Robert knew with a cold, clear certainty that his life was about to be turned upside down. The question was he strong enough to face it? Or was Patricia right, and this was all just a passing phase of a lost man trying to find redemption where it didn't exist? He didn't have the answer. But looking at Beatrice, feeling the weight of the trust she placed in him, Robert knew one thing. He couldn't go back now. The path ahead was terrifying and uncertain, but it was the only path worth taking, even if it cost him everything. The following days were a blur of tension. Robert hired an attorney specializing in family law, Morris Sanders, who reviewed every detail of his life. The judge will question everything, Morris explained. Your routine, Beatrice's presence in the house. Patricia is building a narrative of emotional instability. And what if I was? Would it be so bad to realize I was living wrong and try to change? To the judge, It depends on how we present it. The attorney adjusted his glasses. We need to show that you're not unstable. You're evolving, becoming a better father. But while preparing for the legal battle, Robert faced a more immediate challenge. Clara's surgery was scheduled in 3 days. Beatrice barely slept, her eyes red from crying. The night before the surgery, Robert found the girl sitting in the garden looking at the stars. "Can't sleep?" he asked, sitting beside her. Beatrice shook her head. "What if something goes wrong? What if she doesn't wake up? The doctors are very good. Your mom is strong." "But what if that's not enough?" The girl's voice broke. "I already lost my dad. I can't lose her too." Robert had no words of comfort, so he just sat there beside her, sharing the weight of her fear. "You know what your mum told me? When I offered to pay for the surgery, she almost refused, said she had her pride. That's so my mum. But you know what convinced her? You. She said you deserved to have a healthy mother, that she would do anything for you." The girl moved closer, and Robert hugged her. They stayed like that for a long time, under the stars. On the day of the surgery, Robert cancelled all his meetings. He took Beatrice to the hospital early in the morning. Clara was pale but calm. "You're going to stay with Robert, okay?" she said to Beatrice. "He'll take care of you." "I don't want you to go, Mummy. I'll be back." "I promise." Clara looked at Robert. "Take care of her for me. With my life." When they took Clara to the operating room, Beatrice fell apart. Robert picked her up and carried her to the waiting room. She cried until she had no tears left. The hours dragged on. Robert tried to distract Beatrice, but nothing worked. The girl just sat there, staring at the door to the operating room. It was during this wait that Megan showed up, her face tense. "Mr. Miller, I need to talk to you. In private." Robert asked a nurse to stay with Beatrice and stepped into the hallway. "What happened?" "Patricia was at the house with a private investigator." Megan hesitated. "They took pictures of the room Beatrice is using, of her things scattered around the house, and they asked me questions. A lot of questions." Robert felt his anger rise. "What kind of questions?" "About your routine, about how much time you spend with the twins, about Beatrice, about whether you drink, if you have women over, if you act strangely." "And what did you say?" Megan looked him straight in the eye. "I told the truth, that you've never been as present as you are now, that since Beatrice arrived you've changed, for the better, that for the first time in 4 years of working there, I've seen you act like a real father." Robert hadn't expected that. "Thank you, Megan. But, sir, there's more." She pulled an envelope from her pocket. "The investigator gave me this. He said that if I testified for Patricia at the hearing, she would pay me 6 months' salary." Robert took the envelope. Inside was a blank check. "And are you going to take it?" "Of course not." Megan looked offended. "I don't lie. For money. But you need to know that she's playing dirty, very dirty." Before Robert could answer, the door to the operating room opened. A doctor came out, removing his mask. Robert felt his heart pound. "The family of Clara Rodriguez?" "That's me," Robert said, rushing back to the waiting room. Beatrice was already on her feet, her hands shaking. The doctor smiled, and Robert felt his legs almost give out with relief. "The surgery was a success. She's stable. She'll need a few days in the ICU, but the prognosis is excellent." Beatrice started crying again, but this time with joy. Robert hugged her, feeling his own tears fall. Megan was crying too, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "When can we see her?" Robert asked. "In a few hours. She's still under anesthesia." They waited another 3 hours. When they were finally allowed in, Beatrice ran to her mother's side. Clara was pale, hooked up to tubes and monitors, but her eyes opened at the sound of her daughter's voice. "Mommy." "Hi, sweetie." Clara's voice was weak but clear. "I came back, just like I promised." Robert stood outside, watching through the window. That moment was theirs, not his, but he felt a deep gratitude for having been a part of it, for having helped, for having changed. They returned home late in the afternoon. Beatrice was exhausted but happy. She fell asleep in the car, her head resting on Robert's shoulder. He carried her to her room, laid her in bed and covered her with a blanket. The girl murmured something in her sleep and hugged her stuffed bunny. Robert was coming down the stairs when he heard voices in the living room. Familiar voices. He hurried down and found Patricia there, but this time she wasn't. Alone. She was with the twins, Michael and Thomas, and 3 other people Robert didn't know. "Patricia, what is this?" "This, Robert, is an intervention." She pointed to the people. "This is psychologist Dr. Regina Campos, social worker Charles Fisher, and you already know my attorney." Robert felt the floor disappear from under him. "Intervention?" "We've come to assess the conditions of the home and your mental state," the psychologist said, taking out a notepad. "There have been reports of erratic behavior, drastic personality changes, and inappropriate situations involving minors." "This is absurd." "It's standard procedure," the social worker said. "When there's a custody dispute and allegations of instability, we have to investigate." "In the middle of the night? Without any warning?" "Exactly," Patricia said, a cold smile on her lips, "because we want to see the reality, not a performance." It was then that Michael, who was only 2, started to cry. The sound echoed through the house, loud and desperate. Thomas followed suit seconds later. Patricia didn't move. She just stood there, watching Robert. It was a test. She wanted to see what he would do. Robert went upstairs and picked up the twins. They were hungry and tired, irritated at being woken up and brought to the house by force. He took them to the kitchen, prepared bottles, sat down with one on each lap, and began to feed them. The psychologist and the social worker watched everything, taking notes. Patricia stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "Where is the girl?" the psychologist asked. "Sleeping. She spent the entire day at the hospital. Her mother had heart surgery today." "And you were at the hospital with her?" "Yes." "Instead of being with your own children?" The question was a trap. Robert knew. "I was taking care of a child who needed me. My sons were with their mother." "Interesting priorities," Patricia muttered. Michael and Thomas finished their bottles. Robert put them on the floor, and they crawled to the playroom. He followed them, sat on the floor and started playing with them. He stacked blocks, made funny faces, sang nursery rhymes he didn't even know he knew. And for the first time, he saw his sons smile at him. Genuine smiles, not just reflexes. Michael clapped his hands. Thomas laughed, a gurgling, pure sound. "Daddy," Thomas said suddenly. His first word. Robert froze. The entire world stopped. Patricia gasped. He's never spoken before," she whispered. "Daddy," Thomas repeated, crawling to Robert and hugging his leg. Michael looked at his brother, then at Robert. "Daddy," he copied. The tears came before Robert could stop them. He scooped both boys into his arms and hugged them tight, feeling something inside him break and rebuild itself all at once. The psychologist was writing furiously. The social worker watched intently, and Patricia, for the first time since she'd arrived, looked lost, speechless, out of control. Because in that moment, for the first time, the children had chosen, and they had chosen Robert. "I think," the psychologist said slowly, closing her notepad, "that we've seen enough for today." Patricia left without a word. The social worker and the psychologist followed, promising to send their report soon. Robert was left alone in the playroom with Michael and Thomas asleep in his arms, and for the first time in weeks, he felt something like hope. But the hope was short-lived. Because the next morning, he got a call from Morris Sanders. "Robert, we need to talk, urgently. Patricia has changed her strategy, and it's much worse than we imagined." Robert arrived at Morris Sanders' office with his stomach in knots. The attorney was waiting for him with a stack of documents, his face grim. "Sit down, Robert. This is going to be hard to hear." Robert sat, his hands gripping the arms of the chair. "Patricia isn't just asking for full custody. She's alleging that you're a risk to the children, that your sudden change indicates serious psychological problems, and she has witnesses." "What witnesses?" Megan already said she'll testify for me. It's not Megan. Morris pushed a document across the desk. It's your former executive assistant, Jennifer. She gave a detailed deposition about your behavior over the last few months. Says you've had angry outbursts at work, that you fired 3 employees for no reason, that you're neglecting the company. Robert felt his blood run cold. That's not true. I fired those employees because I found out they were embezzling money. And as for angry outbursts, did you have them? Robert hesitated. 1. When I discovered the fraud. But it was justified. To Patricia, it's evidence of instability. The attorney picked up another paper. And there's more. She found out you spent almost $50,000 in the last 2 weeks on Clara and Beatrice. Hospital, surgery, doctors. So what? I was helping. To a judge it might look irresponsible, spending a fortune on strangers while your children are in an unstable situation. But that's absurd. It's the narrative she's building, and it works. Morris sighed. There's more. Patricia has filed for a compulsory psychological evaluation. Robert fell silent. How much time do we have? The hearing is in 10 days. We need to build a solid defense. And Beatrice, is Patricia going to use her against me? She already is, alleging that it's inappropriate for an 8-year-old girl to live with you with no kinship, no proper supervision, that you're replacing your own children with her. The words hit Robert like punches. Beatrice was alone. Her mother was sick. I was just helping. I know, but we need to prove that. And we need to prove that you're not neglecting Michael and Thomas in the process. Robert went home exhausted. He found Beatrice doing her homework. She smiled when she saw him, but the smile vanished when she saw his expression. Did something happen? Robert sat down next to her. Beatrice, we need to talk. The girl's face paled. Are you going to send me away? No, it's not that. But the situation is complicated. Patricia is using your presence here against me, saying things that aren't true. What kind of things? Robert hesitated. How could he explain to a child the cruel things adults invent? She's saying I shouldn't be taking care of you, that it's strange. Beatrice looked down. So it's my fault. If I hadn't come to live here, none of this would be happening. No. Listen carefully to what I'm about to say. Robert held her face in his, hands forcing her to look at him. None of this is your fault. You didn't ask for your mum to get sick. You didn't ask to be alone. And I don't regret taking you in. Not for a second. But you could lose your sons because of me. If I lose my sons, it will be because the system is unfair. Not because of you. Never because of you. Beatrice threw herself into his arms, crying. Robert held her tight, feeling his own chest tighten. The next few days were a whirlwind. Robert spent hours building his defense. They gathered witnesses, Megan, Clara's doctor, employees from the company. But every victory was followed by a new blow from Patricia. She leaked the custody battle to the press. The newspapers published speculative articles. The pressure at work mounted. The shareholders began to question whether Robert was fit to continue running the company. There were tense meetings, heated arguments. Robert felt everything around him crumbling. It was in one of those meetings that he got the call. It was the hospital. Clara had post-operative complications, an infection. They needed to perform another emergency procedure. Robert walked out of the meeting, ignoring the shareholders' protests. He picked Beatrice up from school and they went straight to the hospital. The girl was pale, trembling, clutching her stuffed bunny like a life raft. Clara was in the ICU, feverish, connected to even more machines than before. The doctor explained the situation. The infection was serious but treatable. However, she would need to stay in the hospital longer, at least another 2 weeks. 2 weeks, Beatrice repeated, her voice thin. But the hearing is in 6 days. I wanted my mom to be there, to explain to the judge that Robert is good, that he saved her life. The doctor looked at Robert with compassion. I'm sorry, but she won't be in any condition to leave here any time soon. That night, Robert stayed with Beatrice at the hospital late. The girl refused to leave, afraid something would happen to her mother while she was away. She fell asleep in the chair next to Clara's bed, her small hand holding her mother's even in sleep. Robert watched the scene and felt something break inside him. How many times had he done this with Michael and Thomas? How many nights had he spent by their side just being present? The answer was shameful. None. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Patricia. "Saw you spent the day at the hospital again. Hope your lawyers told you. The judge won't like hearing you're prioritizing strangers over your own sons. See you at the hearing." Robert looked at Beatrice, then at the message, and for the first time since it all began, he felt something stronger than fear. He felt determination. Patricia was wrong. Beatrice wasn't a stranger. She was a child who needed him. And Michael and Thomas needed him too. It wasn't a matter of choosing between them. It was a matter of being human enough to care for all of them. The next day, Robert did something he had never done before. He brought Michael and Thomas to the hospital with him. The twins were initially scared by all the equipment, but Beatrice greeted them with a smile, showing them the toys she had brought. "These are Michael and Thomas," she introduced them to her mother, who was awake but still weak. "Robert's sons." Clara smiled, despite her pallor. "They're beautiful." Michael looked at Beatrice and held out his little arms. "Bea," he said. It was the first time he had tried to say her name. He said my name. Beatrice was radiant. She picked Michael up and started playing with him. Thomas wanted attention too, and soon the three of them were laughing, making noise in the ICU until a nurse asked for quiet. Robert watched it all with a lump in his throat. There was the answer he had been looking for. It wasn't about choosing. It was about loving. And love had no limit. There was no maximum quantity. There was enough room in his heart for his sons and for Beatrice too. But the world outside didn't see it that way. And in 5 days he would have to prove it to a judge who was already being influenced by Patricia. That night, after putting the twins to bed, Robert went to check on Beatrice. He found her awake, looking out the window. "Can't sleep?" "I'm thinking about the hearing. What if you lose? What if they take Michael and Thomas away from you? Then I'll fight to get them back." "But you could really lose. Because of me." Robert sat on the edge of the bed. "Beatrice, I'm going to tell you something. When I was a kid, I lost my mom. She left and never came back. It made me so afraid of losing people that I stopped caring about anyone. I built walls so high that no one could get in. And you know what happened? I ended up alone. Rich, but alone." Beatrice listened in silence. "You taught me that it's worth tearing down those walls, that it's worth caring, even at the risk of losing, because without that, we're not living. We're just existing." "What if you lose everything?" Robert smiled, a sad but genuine smile. "Then, at least I will have truly lived before it happened." Beatrice hugged her stuffed bunny and closed her eyes. "I'm going to pray for you to win." Robert tucked her in and left the room. In the hallway, he found Megan waiting. "Mr. Miller, there's someone at the door, says it's urgent." It was a process server. He handed Robert an envelope and left without a word. Robert opened it with trembling hands. It was a summons. Patricia had managed to move the hearing up. Instead of 5 days, he now had only 48 hours. And the notice brought something else, a temporary restraining order preventing contact between Robert and the twins until the hearing. He couldn't see them. He couldn't talk to them. Nothing. Patricia had played her final card, and Robert, for the first time since it all began, felt that maybe he wasn't strong enough to win this fight. The longest 48 hours of his life were about to begin. The first few hours after the restraining order were the hardest. Robert stood in the living room, staring at the scattered toys. A little red truck that Michael loved, Thomas's teddy bear, small things that now represented a gigantic absence. Beatrice came down in the morning and found him in the same spot. "You didn't sleep?" He shook his head. The girl sat beside him. She said nothing. She was just there, present. The phone rang. It was Morris Sanders. "Robert, we need to meet. Now." They met at the office. Morris had dark circles under his eyes. "Patricia's strategy is simple. Paint you as unstable. She's going to use every change in your behavior as evidence of a psychological breakdown. And how do we fight that? By showing you're not breaking down, you're evolving. But we need something strong. Something that shows the judge you're capable of being a good father. I have Megan. I have Clara's doctor. It's not enough. We need something personal. Letters, photos, videos. Robert felt his stomach sink. I don't have any of that. What do you mean? I never took pictures with them. I never wrote anything. I was barely present. The words came out bitter. Patricia is right. I was a terrible father. But you're changing. That's what matters. Is it? Because it feels like I'm being punished precisely for trying to be better. Morris was silent. For a moment. Then let's show the change. You have 48 hours. Use this time to document who you are now. Write a letter to your sons. Explain what you felt when they were born, when they said, "Daddy," for the first time. Show that you care. Robert went home and tried to write. He sat at his computer, his hands on the keyboard, but nothing came. How could he put years of absence into words? How could he explain that he loved his children but didn't know how to show it? Beatrice came into the office with a glass of water. Are you trying to write? Trying, it's not working. She pulled up a chair and sat next to him. When my mum first got sick, I had to write an essay at school about the most important person in my life. I cried so much I couldn't write anything. And what did you do? My teacher told me to close my eyes and imagine the person. Imagine a happy moment with them, and then write as if I were telling that story to someone. Robert closed his eyes. He tried to picture Michael and Thomas. The first image that came to mind was the day they were born. He had been terrified, two tiny, fragile babies completely dependent on him. He had felt the urge to run, to let Patricia handle everything. But then another memory came, a more recent one. Michael and Thomas saying "Daddy" for the first time. The way they had smiled at him, Thomas's hug on his leg. Robert started typing. Michael and Thomas, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I need to write it. I was an absent father, a man who thought money was enough. I was wrong. The words flowed. Hours passed. Robert wrote about his fears, about how he had promised to be different and failed. And then you said "Daddy," and something inside me woke up, and I realized there was still time. Time to be the father you deserve. When he finished, it was already night. Beatrice had fallen asleep in the chair beside him. Robert carried her to her room, tucked her in, and kissed her forehead. A simple gesture that would have been unthinkable months ago. The next day, Robert got a call from the hospital. Clara was asking to see him. He took Beatrice and they went straight there. Clara was sitting up in bed, still pale. When she saw her daughter, she smiled. Sweetie, can you wait outside? I need to talk to Robert. Beatrice obeyed. When they were alone, Clara looked at Robert. Megan told me everything about the hearing. Clara, you don't need to worry about this. You need to rest, to recover. I need to thank you. Tears began to fall. You saved my life. You saved my daughter's life. And now you're suffering because of it. It's not because of that. Patricia was already looking for reasons. You and Beatrice are not to blame. But I can help. Clara took his hand. I'm going to testify. I'll explain to the judge that you're a good man, that you've changed, that you deserve to have your sons. You're not in any condition. I will be, even if I have to force my way out of here. You did so much for me and Beatrice. It's the least I can do. Robert felt his eyes burn. Thank you. When they left the hospital, Robert felt a glimmer of hope, but it didn't last long. When he got home, he found a crowd at his door, reporters, photographers, all shouting questions. Mr. Miller, is it true you're losing custody of your sons? There are rumors of inappropriate involvement with employees. Mr. Miller, are you having a nervous breakdown? Robert shielded Beatrice and tried to get into the house. The camera flashes were blinding, the questions cruel. They managed to get inside, but they could hear the reporters outside for hours. Beatrice was shaking. Why are they saying those horrible things? Because Patricia wants the judge to see me as an unstable man, and this helps her. But it's not fair. No, it's not. That night, Robert barely slept. He reviewed every document, every testimony, every piece of evidence. Morris called 3 times, going over the strategy. Everything had to be perfect. In the morning, the day of the hearing, Robert woke with the sunrise. He put on his best suit, shaved carefully, tried to look like the confident man he once was. But the reflection in the mirror showed someone different, someone scared, vulnerable, human. Beatrice knocked on the door. "Can I come in?" "Of course." She was holding the stuffed bunny. "I want you to take him. For good." "Luck." Robert took the worn-out toy and hugged it. "Thank you, Beatrice. You're going to win, right? You're going to get to keep Michael and Thomas?" "I'm going to do everything I can." The girl hugged Robert tightly. "You're the best dad I've ever seen, even if you're not my real dad. And if the judge can't see that, then he's blind." The words stayed with Robert all the way to the courthouse. Morris was waiting for him at the entrance, surrounded by security guards to keep the reporters at bay. "Are you ready?" "No, but let's go anyway." They entered the courthouse. It was an imposing, cold building, full of echoes. Robert felt the weight of every step. In the hallway, he saw Patricia. She looked impeccable, as always, and beside her, Michael and Thomas in a nanny's arms. The twins saw Robert and reached out their little arms. "Daddy, Daddy!" Robert took a step toward them, but Patricia's attorney blocked his path. "The restraining order is still in effect, Mr. Miller. You can't approach them." "They're my sons." "For now." Patricia smiled, cold and calculated. "After today, that might change." Morris grabbed Robert's arm. Don't fall. For this provocation, let's go inside." The hearing room was smaller than Robert had imagined. There were few chairs, a bench for the judge, tables for the attorneys, and in the back, a witness stand. The judge entered. He was a man in his 60s with grey hair and a serious expression. He looked at Robert, then at Patricia, and banged his gavel. "Let's begin. This is a case of disputed joint custody, with a motion to amend to full custody. The petitioner, Patricia Allen, alleges that the respondent, Robert Miller, exhibits inappropriate behavior and poses a risk to the minors. Counsel, you may begin." Patricia's attorney stood up. He was a tall man with a firm voice who spoke with the confidence of someone who already knew he would win. "Your Honor, we will prove today that Mr. Robert Miller, despite his wealth and social standing, is a negligent father who is experiencing a clear psychological crisis. He has abandoned his responsibilities, spent a fortune on strangers, and put his own children in risky situations. We have witnesses, documents, and evidence that leave no doubt. The children will be in danger if they remain in his custody." And then it began. A parade of accusations, distortions, half-truths turned into weapons. Robert listened to it all, feeling each word like a stab, until the attorney said something that made Robert's blood run cold. "And to prove Mr. Miller's unfitness, we call our first witness, someone who worked directly with him and can attest to his erratic and dangerous behavior. We call to the stand Megan Clark." Robert turned to Morris, his eyes wide. "What?" Megan entered the room. She didn't look at Robert. She just walked to the witness stand and swore to tell the truth, and Robert realized with a growing horror that Patricia had managed to turn his only reliable witness against him. The battle was just beginning, and he was already losing. Megan sat on the witness stand. Patricia's attorney approached. "Miss Clark, how long have you worked for Mr. Miller?" 4 years. "Can you describe his behavior with his children?" Megan looked at Robert. "He was absent. He worked a lot. He hardly ever saw the boys." And when Beatrice arrived at the house, that was when her mother got sick. "And did Mr. Miller exhibit strange behavior?" Megan took a deep breath. "Yes. He changed. Completely," the attorney smiled. "Could you elaborate?" "He started paying attention to the children, being present, caring. For the first time in 4 years, I saw him act like a real father." The attorney's smile vanished. "I'm sorry?" "Mr. Miller changed for the better. He started playing with the twins, feeding them, being present. Patricia turned pale. Her attorney tried to recover. "But did you accept money from my client?" "I was offered it. 6 months' salary. I refused. I don't lie for money." "No further questions." Morris Sanders stood up. "Ms. Clark, does Mr. Miller pose any danger to his children?" "None at all. He's learning to be a father." Megan stepped down from the stand. As she passed Robert, she touched his shoulder. Patricia's attorney called more witnesses, but Morris managed to rebut every accusation. Then it was the defense's turn to present witnesses, and to everyone's surprise, the door opened. Clara entered, leaning on a nurse. She was pale, weak, but her eyes were determined. "Your Honor, I'm Clara Rodriguez. I need to testify." The judge frowned. "You were not on the list. I just left the hospital because I need to tell the truth about Mr. Robert Miller." Patricia protested, but the judge allowed it. Clara sat down and swore to tell the truth. "Your Honor, I was on the verge of death. I needed a surgery that cost more than I would earn in a lifetime. Mr. Miller had no obligation to help me, but he paid for everything. He saved my life, and he took care of my daughter as if she were his own." "Ms. Rodriguez, I appreciate—" "Please, let me finish. My daughter was alone in that big house, and Mr. Miller took her in. He changed because he finally understood what matters, and if this court takes his children away now, it will be punishing a man for becoming better." Clara continued, "I grew up without a father. I know what that emptiness feels like. Michael and Thomas have a father. Maybe it took him a while to realize it, but now he knows. Please don't take that chance away from him." She finished, exhausted. The judge made notes. "Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. You may be excused." Clara was led out. As she passed Robert, she smiled. Then the judge asked for Michael and Thomas to be brought in. The twins entered. "Mr. Miller, would you approach?" Robert walked toward his sons. They saw him and reached out their little arms. "Daddy, Daddy!" "You may hold them." Robert picked them both up. They snuggled against him. "Mr. Miller, are you prepared for the responsibilities that fatherhood demands?" "I am, Your Honor. If I'm not ready now, I will learn. Every single day. Because they deserve a father who is present." "And the girl, Beatrice?" "She taught me that family isn't just about blood. It's about care, it's about presence, it's not a matter of choosing. It's about having a heart big. Enough for everyone." The judge nodded. "You may return to your seat." Robert put the twins back with the nanny. They cried, reaching for him. The sound cut through Robert like knives. "Daddy, no! Daddy!" Patricia watched it all with an expression Robert couldn't decipher. Anger, sadness, regret. The judge banged his gavel. "We will take a 1-hour recess. After that time, I will render my decision." Everyone stood. Robert left the room and found Beatrice waiting in the hall with Megan. The girl ran to him. "How did it go? Did you win?" "We don't know yet. The judge will decide after the recess." Morris approached. "You did well, Robert?" "Very well. But it's in the judge's hands now." The next hour was the longest of Robert's life. They sat in a small waiting room. Beatrice wouldn't let go of his hand. Megan brought coffee that no one drank. Morris reviewed his notes, but Robert couldn't focus. Then the door opened. But it wasn't the bailiff calling them back. It was Patricia. "Can I talk to you? Alone?" Morris started to protest, but Robert waved that it was okay. They stepped out into the hallway. Patricia looked different. The armor of confidence had cracked. She looked tired. Human. "I saw you with them," she began. "With Michael and Thomas. The way they reached for you. The way they trusted you." "Patricia, let me talk." She took a deep breath. "I was angry. Angry that you only changed now. Angry that you weren't like this when we were together. Angry. Angry to see you becoming the man I always wanted you to be, but for someone else. For that girl. Beatrice isn't someone else. She's a child who needed help. I know, and that's why—" Patricia paused, tears starting to fall. "That's why I'm going to ask my attorney to withdraw the motion for full custody." Robert was stunned. "What?" I don't want to take our sons from you. I just wanted you to be a better father. And you are. Finally. She wiped her tears. They need you, and you need them. I'm not going to fight this anymore. Patricia, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just be the father they deserve. Be the man you're becoming. She turned to leave, but stopped. And Robert, thank you for showing me that change is possible, even when it seems too late. She left. Robert stood there trying to process what had just happened. When they returned to the courtroom, Patricia's attorney requested to speak. Your Honor, upon reconsideration, my client would like to withdraw the motion for full custody. She requests that the joint custody arrangement be maintained, with adjustments to the visitation agreement. The judge looked surprised. He glanced at Patricia, who nodded. Then he looked at Robert. Mr. Miller, do you agree to this proposal? Yes, Your Honor. Then it is so ordered. Joint custody will be maintained. The visitation agreement will be revised. To ensure greater time for both parents with the children, this case is closed. The bang of the gavel echoed through the room. Robert felt his legs give out. Morris caught him. You won, Robert. You won. But Robert barely heard him. He only saw Michael and Thomas being brought to him. He took them in his arms and hugged them tight, smelling their baby scent, the small warmth of their bodies, the precious weight of the life he had almost lost. Beatrice ran to him and joined the hug. Megan did too, crying openly. It was a chaotic, emotional moment, perfect in its imperfection. Across the room, Patricia watched, and for the first time in years, Robert saw something in her face he hadn't seen since they were young and in love. Peace. They left the courthouse under a bright sun. The reporters were still there, but now the questions were different. Mr. Miller, how do you feel? Robert looked at Michael and Thomas in his arms, at Beatrice holding his hand, at the blue sky above. I feel like a man who's been given a second chance, and I'm not going to waste it. That night, back at home, Robert put the twins to bed. He sang to them something he had never done before, off-key, made-up songs but sung with love. Then he went to check on Beatrice. She was awake, looking out the window. Are you okay? I'm thinking about my mum. She did all that today for you, even though she was so weak. Your mother is an incredible woman, just like her daughter. Beatrice smiled. Robert, can I ask you something? Of course. When my mum gets better and I have to leave, will we still see each other? The question hit Robert in the chest. He hadn't thought about it, that Beatrice was temporary, that at some point Clara would recover and they would go back to their own lives. Always, he said, and realized it was true. You're part of my life now, and nothing is going to change that. Beatrice hugged her stuffed bunny and closed her eyes, satisfied. Robert left the room and went down to the living room. The house was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet, not empty, full of life, of love, of possibilities. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Clara, sent from the hospital. Thank you for everything. You saved more than my life. You saved my daughter too, and you saved yourself in the process. Get some rest. You deserve it. Robert put his phone away and looked around. This house that had always felt cold and impersonal now felt like a home. There were toys scattered about, drawings on the walls, life in every corner. He had won the battle, kept his sons, proved he could change. But as he got ready for bed, one last question lingered in his mind. What now? What would it be like to truly be the father and the man he had promised to be? The answer would come, day by day, choice by choice. And for the first time in his life, Robert Miller was ready to find out. 3 months had passed since the hearing. Fall arrived, painting the trees in golden hues. Robert's mansion, once cold, was now full of life. Michael and Thomas ran through the yard, chasing butterflies. Their laughter echoed across the property. Robert watched from the porch, smiling. They've grown so much, Clara commented beside him. She had been discharged from the hospital a month ago, still weak but recovering. They really have. Beatrice appeared carrying tea. She served it carefully, concentrating. "Thank you, sweetie," Clara said, kissing her forehead. "I helped make the cookies. Megan taught me." Robert bit into one. "It's perfect." Beatrice ran off to play with the twins. The three of them were inseparable now. "She's going to miss them when we leave," Clara said quietly. "Me too," Robert admitted. Clara took a deep breath. "I was thinking, maybe we could stay a little longer, until I'm fully recovered. The offer stands. It always will. Then I'll go back to work, part-time, and I'll pay rent." "Clara, don't argue, I have my pride," Robert smiled. "All right, a symbolic rent." They shook hands. In the yard, Beatrice shouted with joy as she caught a butterfly. She held it gently, showed it to the twins, and then let it go, watching it fly away. A few days later, Robert came home to a surprise. Patricia was there, having tea with Clara. "Patricia," Robert said, surprised, "I didn't know you were coming today." "I know. Sorry for not calling." She stood up. "I was stopping by to pick up the boys and Clara invited me in. We've been talking." "About?" Patricia looked at Clara, who nodded encouragingly. "About a lot of things. About motherhood. About regrets. About second chances." Robert didn't know what to say. "I wanted to apologize," Patricia continued, "for what I did, for the hearing, the accusations, for everything. I was angry. Angry that you changed for the better without me. Angry to see you becoming the man I always wanted you to be, but for other people. Patricia, let me finish. I realized that I needed to change too, to stop using the boys as a weapon, to stop trying, to control everything. And when I saw you in that courtroom with them in your arms, I saw something I'd never seen before. Real love, not obligation, not duty. Love." Tears began to stream down her face, and I realized I was wrong, and that if I continued down that path, I would lose not only you, but the chance to have a healthy relationship with our sons. Robert stepped closer, and to both their surprise, hugged her. A brief but sincere hug. "Thank you for coming here, for saying that." When they separated, Patricia wiped her tears. "I wanted to propose something. A new time-sharing arrangement with the boys, more balanced, and maybe we could do some things together, as a family, not a couple, but a family. I'd like that very much." Michael and Thomas came running in, with Beatrice close behind. Seeing their mother, they ran to her. "Mommy!" Patricia scooped them up, kissing their foreheads. "My loves, you've grown so much." Beatrice stood a little apart, shyly. Patricia noticed her and smiled. "Hi, Beatrice. You've been taking good care of them, haven't you?" "I try. You're doing a great job." Patricia held out her hand. "Thank you for taking care of them, and for taking care of him too." Beatrice shook her hand, surprised and proud. That night, after Patricia took the twins for the weekend, Robert, Clara and Beatrice had dinner together. Megan had prepared a special meal, and they ate on the porch under the stars. "You know what I was thinking?" Beatrice said between bites of pasta. "When I grow up, I want to be just like you, Robert." "Like me?" "Yeah. I want to help people who need it. Like you helped me and my mom. I want to difference in people's lives." Robert felt his eyes burn. "You already make a difference, Beatrice, more than you know." After dinner, Robert put Beatrice to bed. She was already too big to be carried, but she still liked him to read her stories before she slept. That night, she chose a book about a girl who rescued animals. "Robert," she said as he was leaving, "do you think I'll still see Michael and Thomas after we leave?" "Of course, always. You're heart siblings, remember? That doesn't change. Promise?" "I promise." Beatrice smiled and hugged her stuffed bunny. "Good night." "Good night, kiddo." Robert went downstairs and found Clara in the living room, looking through photo albums he had started making, pictures from the last few months, of the kids playing, of everyday moments, of smiles and hugs. "You've become a real father," she said. "I'm trying." "No, Robert, you're not trying, you are. The difference is in every one of these photos, in the way Michael and Thomas look at you, in the way Beatrice trusts you." She closed the album. "You saved us, but we saved you too. Robert sat beside her. You really did. You showed me that life is more than numbers in a bank account, more than meetings and contracts. And what is life then? Robert thought for a moment, looking toward the stairs where Beatrice slept, at the photos of the twins, at the strong woman beside him who had fought so hard. It's this, these moments, these people, this feeling that despite everything we're all in this together, and that's enough. Clara rested her head on his shoulder, tired but happy. It really is enough. They sat like that for a long time in comfortable silence, while outside the night fell completely and the stars appeared one by one, lighting up the sky. Weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon, Robert hosted a barbecue. He invited Patricia, the twins, Clara, Beatrice, Megan and her family, Morris Sanders, and even a few colleagues from work. The yard was filled with people, laughter and the smell of good food. Michael and Thomas ran around with Beatrice, playing tag. Patricia chatted animatedly with Clara about recipes. Megan coordinated everything with her usual efficiency, but now with a permanent smile on her face. Robert was at the grill when Morris approached. You look happy. I am. For the first time in a long time, I'm truly happy. You deserve it, after everything you've been through. You know, I used to think happiness was having control over everything, money, power, success. But it's not. It's this. Robert gestured to the crowded yard. It's having people who care. It's making a difference in their lives. It's being present. Morris smiled. You learned your lesson well. I had good teachers. Robert looked at Beatrice, who was now teaching the twins how to make a flower crown. Some very small but very good teachers. The sun began to set, painting the sky orange and purple. The children finally tired out and sat on the lawn eating ice cream. Beatrice was between Michael and Thomas, all three of them dirty and happy. Robert took a picture, another one for the album, another memory to keep. Clara came over. Thank you for this day, for everything. Thank you for agreeing to stay, for giving all of us this chance. It wasn't a chance. It was a gift. That night, when everyone had gone home and the house returned to silence, Robert went up to check on Beatrice. She was awake, looking out the window. What are you thinking about? About how fast life changes. 3 months ago I was so scared. Scared of losing my mom, scared of being alone, scared of everything. And now I have a family. Not a normal one, but a family. Robert sat on the edge of the bed. Families are never normal. They're messy, complicated, imperfect, but they're ours, and that's what matters. Do you think we'll stay like this, together? I think it doesn't matter where each of us lives or how life changes. What matters is that we'll always care about each other. We'll always be there when we're needed. That doesn't change. Beatrice hugged Robert tightly. I love you, you know that, right? The words hit Robert in the chest, stealing his breath. I love you too, kiddo. More than you can imagine. She fell asleep soon after, clutching her bunny. Robert stayed there a while longer, watching her breathe, thinking about how 3 months ago his life had been completely different. He had almost lost everything. But in losing, he had found something so much greater. He found purpose, he found family, he found himself. And as he went downstairs and turned off the lights, Robert knew, with a deep and unshakable certainty, that he would never again be the man he once was. He would never again live just for the appearance of success. He had learned, the hardest way possible, that true wealth wasn't in bank vaults or multi-million-dollar contracts. It was in a child's hug, in laughter in the yard, in shared tea on the porch, in second chances and new beginnings. It was in every present moment, in every choice to be there, to care, to love. And for the first time in his life, Robert Miller was truly rich.